This is the third continuing resolution this Congress has passed. How do we know this is the last one? Can we know that?
We don't know that. Congress has been able to keep the government open only by kind of kicking the can down the road. The one mild success, if you're Mike Johnson, is that you kept your job, at least for now, in this. But looking into March, there's a bunch of different things that get a bit more complicated. As you said, they were about halfway through the fiscal year without actually, doing anything beyond just extending last year's budget. And by the time you get to the end of April, that's when mandatory cuts start kicking into effect. So Congress has more of a real deadline there that they need to act and, decide on something that they want to do. And of course, things that got left on the side of the road here, a tax deal with business tax credits, child tax credits, as well as border Ukraine and other foreign aid.
Well, interesting. So just imagine a world, Kailey, in which we have a potential government shutdown, Super Tuesday, and the State of the Union. That could all happen, right?
And also potentially the start of the trial of former President Trump here in Washington.
Just consider the way these might collide. And it comes off of what happened yesterday, Jordan, an important meeting at the White House. Not over avoiding a government shutdown. That seemed to be baked in already. But the big four with President Biden in the cabinet room talking about a deal on the border that would potentially unlock funding for Ukraine. There seemed to be a sense of optimism when the speaker and others came out. Was it real?
I think on the surface it's real. I mean, they talked in general terms like, we all agree that Ukraine and the border are important. Yeah. But then when it gets down to the details, that's where it gets hard. And I don't think we saw a lot of concrete progress there yesterday. In fact, late last night, Donald Trump, who's been in touch with Speaker Mike Johnson, Kate went on his social media platform and said Republicans should not accept any border deal that's short of perfect. And so that's not going to give those Republicans a lot of negotiating room to strike a deal, especially with the election getting closer and closer.
Absolutely. And a margin that's getting smaller and smaller if you're a Republican in the House of Representatives or Speaker Mike Johnson, who is trying to pass this kind of legislation. We should note that the continuing resolution that just passed, the bill that kept the government open or will keep the government open when it gets President Biden's signature, passed with overwhelming Democratic support, and more than 100 Republicans voted against it. If Johnson can't even get the votes to keep the government funded, is he really going to be able to get the votes on funding for Ukraine, Laura?
This is really the difficult issue. There are Democrats that are most fully behind that, but it's what does that immigration piece look like? And that is what is going to be the linchpin of if you can get this passed. Really, the driving force behind this deal is coming from the Senate, not the House, just because there's too many landmines on both sides of the House to get that done. What's kind of interesting here is, of course, Donald Trump talks about immigration all the time, but everyone in Congress knows that if Donald Trump becomes president, they're not going to get an immigration deal done. So they have to do it now while Biden is still in office, because it will just be too toxic in a Trump White House.
The sticking points here seem to have come down to a pretty small list, and namely parole. Is this something that Joe Biden is willing to move on? If you've got a world in which Speaker Johnson says, I don't have to have H.R. 2, I might be open to a slightly different version. The president was speaking to flexibility yesterday. Is that going to happen?
The White House has suggested they're open to flexibility on changing the asylum rules. They haven't said much on parole, and I suspect that they would be very cautious about what they could accept. It sounds like a very small technical provision, but really it's something they've used quite frequently during this administration to ease pressure at the border, not to mention take in all those people fleeing Afghanistan and Ukraine. And so how's the president going to talk about U.S. support for Ukraine being absolute when he's kicking Ukrainians who fled the war out of the country because he's no longer able to provide them parole? That might be something that's tough for him to stomach.
But, of course, he's facing a tough re-election challenge. He's actively campaigning for a second term, and we know the border issue is one that is very front of mind for voters. So, arguably, President Biden may feel a little bit more impetus to get something done here. The issue is he's going to have a competitor in that race. He's going to likely be up against, barring a surprise, former President Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee. You were alluding to this, the pressure he may be exerting on the House of what they should or should not agree to. And this is actually something that Senator Tom Tillis was speaking about on Capitol Hill earlier today. Let's just take a listen to what the Republican from North Carolina had to say.
I respectfully disagree with the president. I mean, he could not have possibly seen what we're negotiating. And so I'll reserve judgment on that after it's been made public. But I think what James Lankford has done is good work, and we should support it.
The president he's referring to there being the former president, Donald Trump, not the current president, Joe Biden. But doesn't that just speak to how much more difficult this is going to be to accomplish, Jordan, in an election year?
Absolutely. Look, there's a lot of reasons for Joe Biden to want a deal. That's why he's considering changes to the asylum system that could annoy or anger a lot of Democrats, because he knows that getting a deal will help neutralize this issue politically, not to mention addressing the problem at the border. For Republicans, this has been quite a beneficial political issue for them. And if they strike a deal with Joe Biden now, I think Donald Trump and his allies understand their leverage goes away. And so they might want this as a live ball. At least some Democrats have told me they don't think that Republicans actually want a deal. They want this as an act of crisis going into the election. And so there's a lot of distrust there, meaning it's going to be very difficult to get this to the finish line.
It was pretty remarkable considering the conversation that was had apparently in that White House meeting yesterday as Jake Sullivan delivered a classified detailed briefing on what would happen to Ukraine if funding were to be cut off. We're on the eve of that happening. Reports suggested that Mike Johnson was receptive, that Republicans were receptive to that conversation at the White House. How is the conference feeling about it, though?
This is what Mike Johnson is really figuring out, that being a leader is very hard in the current House environment, that there's certain things that he's going into this negotiation saying, look, maybe we can cut a deal. Biden has been open to making a deal on certain things. But then he has people like Chip Roy who, will go into these closed door meetings in the House basement and then just lambast him for, kind of being open to wheeling and dealing on certain things. Certainly if you're Johnson, having Trump come out and saying, look, you need to accept a whole deal that's perfect, you can't compromise, also makes things very difficult for him.
Well, something else that makes it difficult is the motion to vacate, and members like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying if you put Ukraine aid on the floor and it passes, we're going to exercise that ability just like we did with Kevin McCarthy. How real is the chance that we have another speaker fight ahead of us?
It is very real. The same rules apply to Johnson that were applied to McCarthy. So one person just has to come forward and say, hey, let's have this vote. And if Democrats stick together and vote against Mike Johnson, which they're very likely to do, all it takes is 2 or 3 Republicans to join them, depending on the day, depending who shows up that day, and he could be out of a job.